Patch 2.2 brings an attacker like we've never seen it before. We are getting Seed. It's both an attacker and a support all packed into one. Let's talk about them. Hello everybody, welcome to the channel, my name is Hako. In this video, I attempt to recreate a video I did for Alice that was very appreciated, where I'm gonna take Seed and kind of highlight every pro and every con that I can find with her to help you make a more informed decision if she's worth your polychromes. Let's begin. First and foremost, I have tried out Seed extensively on the creator beta servers, and like all of my opinions are formed from my testing on her over there, which means that I played her for an extensive amount of time every day for the past 1.5 weeks. Now, I made a video after 24 hours of playing Seed, like kind of giving you all my initial impressions, and I gave her a rating of like 5 out of 10, like overall. And I also said that I would, tell you if anything like changes. I would like to adjust that some, and we'll get to that later on in the video. So, quick rundown, what is Seed? Seed is an electric attack gradient that is 1 part attacker and 1 part buffer. You pair her up with another attacker, and both Seed and her attacker, which she makes into her vanguard, gets a 1000 attack, 25% damage increase, and 30 crit damage. So, slightly short of the Astra equivalent of buffs. So Seed is the only attack gradient in the game that actually wants to be paired up with another attacker. Now, I really like what they're going for with this, and I think the concept is cool. But if this was an attempt to bring attackers up to anomaly cactus level, it didn't really hit the full mark. So, strength-wise, how strong is Seed? She is strong. She's up there with the top DPSs, although I feel like she falls behind slightly compared to some other top modern DPSs that we've gotten, like Yishuan or Alice. And I'd say that her damage potential is more akin to Evelyn in her best in slot team and Hugo in his best in slot team. That's kind of comparable Seed in her best in slot team. In Deadly Assault, I would have liked to see a couple more thousand, out of her against bosses that she's really incentivized against, like the Unknown Corruption Complex, and especially with the potency of the buff that is currently available in that Deadly Assault. Now, here's what this buff does, and it is absolutely disgusting. Just to test out the potency of this buff, I selected the anomaly buff that doesn't really do anything for Seed, and I saw the difference, and the difference was around 15,000 in score. So this buff was available for 2 of the rotations of the assault bosses. We always get 3 rotations. We always get 3 rotations of the bosses, and most of the bosses that it gave us wasn't really bosses that were good for Seed. We had no Typhoon, we had no Marionettes, and there was a lot of anomaly bosses. But just making you aware that a lot of showcases will have this buff running with Seed, and it might inflate her numbers a little bit. Because it is extremely potent, and I feel like it's miles ahead of any other Deadly Assault buff that we've seen. But overall, I would say that Seed is strong. Now, she's an electric carry, which means that we have to compare her against other electric carries. And kinda on average, I managed to get 6,000 more scores with Seed than with Ambi. Around 7,000 to 8,000 scores better with Haramasa. Mind you, I'm quite rusty with Haramasa, so, might be a little bit skill issue. And with Yanagi, it is depending on the content. Against anomaly-focused content, Yanagi will outperform Seed, but against attacker-focused content, Seed will outperform Yanagi. But against neutral content that is equally good versus anomaly and attacker, I saw an increase of around 5,000 with Seed compared to Yanagi. Now, also important to point out, these electric attackers, they can also work as a great teammate to Seed. And they all feel pretty decent in the sub-DPS role. I actually had a lot of fun playing Anton together with Seed. It comes with some quirks, because you need to completely suck Anton dry, so he can enable his stage again, because we need to do an EX special every 40 seconds, and you are able to constantly keep Anton in his powered up state, but you shouldn't, because we need that activation. So strength-wise, I would say that she is good, but she didn't blow me away. Now that's Seed's strength as a main carry. Now, number 2, let's talk about her as a support. Like I said, she provides kinda Astra level of buffs to any attacker you pair her up with. And the shoehorned caveat here is that it only works for attackers. So if you're running a very attacker-loaded team, that's gonna be huge. But if you find yourself, not having too many attackers and, don't enjoy attackers, the value of the buff diminishes. But someone being on Astra's level when it comes to handing out buffs is obviously a good thing. And the only other characters that have beaten on the buff part is Yasuo and Astra. Now, important to note about Seed's buff as well, it is Seed buffing herself and her vanguard, so the other attacker. Whoever you pick as the third slot will never benefit of any buffs from Seed. This does come into play with certain, say, stunner agents that are very hard hitting, like Trigger or Lighter. So her role as a stunner very much mimics her role as an attacker. She is good at it and she can almost compete with some of the top levels one, but falls slightly short. Now let's move on to number 3. Let's call this one gameplay. So the core philosophy of Seed is if you have an attacker of equal value, you kind of like split up the field time between Seed and your other attacker. Now if Seed is like more invested than your other attacker, we want to spend more time on Seed, and then we only see like attacker number 2 as, an energy drink. They're only there to supply resources and reapply the buff for Seed. And in such a case, you can also equip the second attacker with like a support set, because they're really only there to fuel Seed. However, if the balance shifts the other way, so your second attacker, say that, you make very bad financial decisions and you have an M6 Ellen, well, then the energy drink becomes Seed. If you pair Seed up with an existing attacker that you have invested a lot into, well, we want as much field time as possible on that other attacker. And then Seed's main purpose is to, fuel up this attacker. Because every time Seed damages an enemy, she refills 2 energy to that other attacker. And this is kind of an interesting dynamic. So if they're all equal, well, then, they get an equal amount of field time. If Seed is the more invested one, we want more field time on Seed. If the other one is the more invested one, we want more field time on that one. Now let's keep this dynamic in mind because it will come in with a point I have later. Number 4, W engine. So Seed's own W engine, it is a good one. Is she, however, one of those characters that, really needs her engine? I would not say so. It is a good one, but we also have existing good ones in the game. Her second best one is Severed Innocence, which is Soldier Zero Ambi's one. She can stack most of this up except the aftershock part. And Severed Innocence is around 20% worse than her own signature one. Now the biggest selling point of her own signature engine is that it has a lot of crit rate. It has 24 as an advanced stat and then an additional 15 as flavor text. This is huge because Seed doesn't really have any crit rate in her kit. She doesn't get any for leveling up her core skill or, anywhere else. Another decent one is Markota Desire, and you can also go Drill Rig Red Axis. This one is actually surprisingly good, especially if we're going for a 50% split on the field time with Seed. Because once this buff is active, you will do a lot of damage with your basic attack, which is Seed's main source of damage. But when the buff, is on cooldown, she's dead in the water. So I'd say only consider this one if you're planning to, switching off Seed a lot. Number 4, Orphie and Sanby. So I don't feel like we can talk about Seed without also mentioning Orphie and Soldier Zero Ambi. Orphie is gonna be the best in slot teammate for Seed. And arguably, Seed is gonna be the best in slot teammate for Orphie as well, although there are clear synergies with Soldier Zero Ambi as well. Where does that leave Seed? In the current state, I would think that Seed pulls ahead of Soldier Zero Ambi a bit when paired up with Orphie, but we do also know that Soldier Zero Ambi buffs are coming in the very near future. We don't know what these buffs are, so we don't know how that's gonna impact her power and her as a teammate to Orphie. She's probably not gonna be worse, instead better. So if you're sitting there and not really feeling Seed, should you be pulling Mosquito? Should you be pulling Seed just to power up your Orphie? And you have a Soldier Zero Ambi? In my opinion, no. I think Ambi is gonna be, more than good enough as a teammate, and especially after her buffs. And one of my big gripes with Seed right now is that she has a very broadly applicable buffs to every attacker can make use of the buffs, but not really any other attacker can make use of the playstyle. Because right now, every attacker that we have, they are dead in water when we switch them out. Orphie is gonna change this because she is the first attacker that has active aftershock attacks that happens even after she switches out. So my personal hope is that Seed will feel right when she's paired up with Orphie, and I will test this out as soon as I have access to Orphie on the creator servers. Number 6, ratings. In my previous video, I gave Seed a 5 out of 10. Now I want to adjust that a little bit, and I want to also break it apart. Because I've been getting the question a lot, like, oh, like 5 in what sense? 5 in fun in strength, etc. So like, let's take them. Let's do them like that. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how strong would I say that Seed is as an agent? If at current Miyabi and Yichuan is at a 10, I would put Alice at a 9 strength-wise, then I'll put Seed at a 7. Now, more importantly, from a scale from 1 to 10, how fun would I say that Seed is? Well, she is super unique. She has a lot of like flash and cool animations, and like when roaming around in New Eridu, she also like gets her little bike to ride around on. Like the novelty of like first trying out Seed and shooting missiles, like it's a joy. Like the first, hours just experiencing that because it feels unique. Then when, the fresh new paint smell has kind of gone, she does feel kind of clunky with very, very lengthy animations, and there is no team that just right now feels right for her. And as someone that absolutely loves attackers, like my favorite alias in this game is attackers, and like I associate attackers with like a lot of like reactiveness to what's happening, repairing, perfect dodging, etc. And I don't know, in that aspect, like Seed doesn't really feel like an attacker, because a lot of it is like, iframes and you just powering through anything anyway. So my fun score for Seed gets a 5 out of 10. And just for reference, I would put Ellen and Evelyn at 10 and Soldier Zero Ambi in the current state maybe at 4. So more fun than Soldier Zero Ambi, but a lot less fun than Ellen and Evelyn for me personally. So we've done strength, we've done fun. Now let's do maybe the big one. Overall pull value from a scale from 1 to 10. Now, with Seed, there is a massive like discrepancy in like where I would rank this depending on how your account looks. If you're like me and you've been playing since day 1 and you have most of the casts except Hugo, the pull priority goes down by a lot. But however, if you've kinda recently started out, in the last few months or maybe half a year, and you're still building your roster, I think that Seed is actually a very, very good pick, because we do get 2 and we only pay for 1. In Seed, you get like a main carry and like one of the best supports in the game, like for the same price. And like I can't overstate how good this is for like a new account. Also, having a competent electric carry is super important in this game, because this game has sons of bitch enemies that are robots and that they put on a shield, and you can't do shite until that shield is gone. Having a competent carry for electric is super goddamn important. I probably class it as the number 1 annoying element to like not have an answer to. So I would say if you're a newer account, if you're kind of a new account, like you're still trying to put all of your teams together, then I'll put a pull rating on Seed for 6 out of 10. For a new account, still like struggling to get characters together, because we do get 2 in 1, and she's not too dependent on her engine. Electric is very good to like have characters in, so that is good, and she is a competent carry and a competent buffer. Now, however, if your account looks more similar to mine, you already have a lot of buffers, like all of the bases are already kinda covered. For my own account, I'd say that the pull priority for Seed is more akin to a 2 or a 3, because there is not a single like attacker team that I have available that would benefit more of Seed than it does of like anybody else that I currently like possess. And I'd also say that if you have a Soldier Ambi just sitting there collecting dust, the pull priority gets dialed down even more, because she is getting buffed, and we don't know what those buffs are, but we like a sure bet is that like surely she'll at least be stronger. So that's it for ratings. Now let's do number 7. When to pull and when not to pull. That is the question. When to pull? Well, if you really like Seed. Like, Seed is a good character. I'm not saying she's bad at all. She's a good competent main character, she's a good competent buffer as well. So if you want to go for Seed, like by the love of God, don't let me or any other creator like, dissuade you from pulling on Seed. Like, go ahead. She's not a trap or a bait or, any other fancy term that you would use. And you should also pull for Seed if you need a competent electric carry, because like I said, it is very handy to have one. And also, if you're into feet, you'll have a delight every time you press the ultimate. Now, when should you not pull for Seed? The biggest one, if you don't like Seed. You don't like how she looks, you don't like the gameplay, etc., then don't. I have a very hard time imagining that she'll be, a meta unit that you'll be kicking yourself for skipping, and if that turns out to be the case, there is always the rerun. And if your account looks similar to mine, where you already have competent electric carries like Sanby and Yanagi, we already have a bunch of buffers like Astra, Caesar, Yusso, etc., then I think that it might be wiser to, get some of the other upcoming characters instead. Now for the next one. Are we at number 8 or number 9? I don't know, but the next one. Personal opinions, and then let's do closing words. What's my personal opinions on Seed? I gotta say I'm a little bit let down by Seed. Both, maybe most in terms of like fun, and as someone that really likes attackers, recognizes that, attackers have it a lot more rough than Anomaly or Rupture. I was hoping that Seed maybe was here to make attackers a bit more attractive, because I do find that they are the most fun to play. I also do find Seed slow and clunky, which, makes sense because most of the time she's in a big robot, so, it makes sense. It just doesn't feel too good. I've heard rumors that at one point in time Seed might have had aftershock attacks, which I kind of wish that they would have stayed, so there would have been some synergy with Soldier Zero Ambi and, Obel as a whole, since they are trying to push aftershock on them. And I'm a little bit afraid that when Sanby gets her buffs, especially after Sanby gets her buff, what's the real purpose of Seed? She becomes a little bit the odd one out. Because there is a chance that after Sanby's buffs, Orphie will rather be paired up together with her, and then you slot in Trigger as the third one, and they all synergize in harmony. Meanwhile, I feel like Seed is a little bit left out. But she is very ambitious, and in certain ways I do like that, we have a budget unit, or kind of a budget unit is accessible for people to pick up, and they get basically 2 characters in one. I think that's very friendly towards new players. Maybe, as someone that doesn't really benefit of that new fancy deal, I just wish that I would. But this is one of the things that I really do love Zenless for. The fact that they are willing to innovate, try new things. Maybe not all things hit the marks, but I'd rather them shoot for the moon and miss sometimes, rather than just shooting for the toilet. I'm not sure which analogy I'm going for, but yeah, I like what they were trying to do. Now, closing words. I make these videos to try showcase the character in every light possible, in the good light for the characters and in the bad light for the character. Something I feel like we as a society, are getting worse at is seeing nuances. It's either white or black. And I want to bring as much nuance as possible because I think that's healthy for the discourse. And all of our accounts looks different, we have different needs to improve that account. So I'm trying to give you the tools to decide what is best for your account. And I'm also trying to and I also want to shed light how I'm thinking with my account and why I'm making this and that decision. Now, I really like making these kind of videos, and you people seem to appreciate it, so I'll make it a habit. Before any character comes out, we'll have, the Seed talk, the Orphie talk, etc. And everybody, as always, thank you so very much for watching. Stay kind to one another, have a big hug, and until next time, Hako out.